Good evening. I'd like to call this meeting to order. Statement of meeting notice. Adequate notice of this meeting was given to the public 48 hours in advance of the date, setting forth the date, time, location, and type of meeting. Notice was sent to the Daily Record, the Observer Tribune, and the Washington Township Clerk, and was posted on the district website at www.wtschools.org. All please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all.
Good evening, Washington Township, and happy holidays. Thank you to all that are joining us this evening for our last BOE meeting of the year. While our agenda is somewhat light this evening, I would like to highlight a few things happening in our district. First, we are pleased to report that our district's application for the High Impact Tutoring Grant was approved. With that, we posted for 28 tutoring positions, 2 nurses, and 2 coach positions. The district is planning to launch these 2 tutoring services centered on our 3rd and 4th grade learners to run from January through April. The grant was competitive, and we would like to extend our sincerest thanks to those involved in putting forth the application, which has yielded this great privilege. We also would like to highlight the success of our integrated pre-K program. As a result of its success, internal discussions have been initiated with a focus on a possible expansion of the program for our disabled students to potentially include full-day services. Our leadership team intends to engage in continued discussions amongst building leaders and to include our educators. It is expected that the district will reach a decision about potential expansion by the latter half of January. Also in the works for January are social media assemblies and a community presentation. These assemblies will emphasize for our students the importance of responsible cell phone use and social media use. We are aiming to host the community presentation before the start of February. This initiative is in partnership with iRock2, and we certainly encourage all families to independently seek out its website at irock2.org in the interim. Lastly, our January meeting will bring with it new faces as the board will reorganize. This meeting is the last for myself and board members Wilson and Kostenblatt. Each of us ran for the board and started our term in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic. We came in at a challenging time, a time where masks were mandated, restrictions and quarantine guidelines were in flux, where mental health issues were on the rise, and where the future of the school year held uncertainty. It was common for parents and guardians, myself included, to be overwhelmed with concerns for their children, concerns for special education services, and lost educational and social opportunities. We've come a long way. I speak for myself when I say that I'm proud of the work we've done with our fellow board members over the past 3 years. I thank you for that. I wish the future board the best of luck in its continued efforts to improve our district for our learners and their families. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Madam President, and good evening, Washington Township School community. Let me first begin with our HIB report. Over the past month since our last board meeting, we've had a total of 7 HIB investigations, 6 of which were unfounded and 1 that was founded. There are a couple items on this evening's agenda I would like to highlight for the community. First, item 9 under finance should be noted as our acceptance of a New Jersey Department of Education grant to fund new tutoring services focused specifically on our 3rd and 4th grade students. This was a competitive grant available to all New Jersey school districts, and our success in winning this grant is due in full measure to the efforts of our Director of Curriculum Instruction, Mrs. Debbie Russo. I would like to publicly acknowledge her and her efforts in winning these additional funds for our schools. Last week, we posted 28 tutoring positions, and teachers from all grades across the entire district have already begun to apply. This grant will fund 25 one-hour tutoring sessions in groups of no larger than 4 students. We hope to launch these tutoring sessions by the end of January and have them run through April of this school year. Again, thank you to Mrs. Russo for her leadership in bringing these resources to our district, and I would encourage all teachers who may be interested in these tutoring opportunities to please apply, and if you have any questions, do not hesitate to reach out to Mrs. Russo directly. Once the positions are filled, families of all the students identified for these services will be contacted. Second, also under finance, I want to highlight the donation noted in 5B, whereby these funds were raised from our former 8th grade students who performed in the musical last spring and wanted to assist us in providing better sound equipment for our students' performances going forward. We appreciate this gift, and we are committed to using these funds to rent higher quality sound equipment for this spring's performance, which I am pleased to share tonight will be a production of The Addams Family. And just as a reminder to our students and families about our long-term commitment for improved sound for student performances at LVMS, it will be solved with the upcoming planned referendum projects. Switching gears slightly, I did also want to take this opportunity to remind our community about the 1,000 Hours Outside project. Some may recall we've discussed this in the past, and during the middle school back-to-school night activities, our PE teachers shared resources about this website that families can access online. As we enter the winter months, it can be more difficult to stay active and outdoors. So again, I wanted to remind the community about this resource, which they can easily access if they so desire. I'm also excited to share with the community this evening that across all of our schools this past week, we launched recruitment efforts to recruit students in grades 5 through 8 who would like to participate in the new TREPS after-school program. We plan to launch these activities in all of our schools in January, and please mark your calendars for Saturday, March 16th. This will be the date when we host our second annual STEM Expo here at the middle school, and if all goes according to plan, it will also be the date of our TREPS Marketplace, where our TREPS entrepreneurs will be able to sell their products to the public. It promises to be an exciting day. Lastly, as noted earlier, this evening marks the final board meeting for 3 of our board members. I would like to offer my personal gratitude and appreciation for their service to our community over these past few years. As a small token of our appreciation, Board Member Wilson, Board Member Kassenblatt, and Board Member Musarino have all been presented with a plaque this evening commemorating their dedication and distinguished service to our community. On behalf of our entire administration and staff, we'd like to thank them for all they have done to help move our schools forward. In closing, let me take a moment to wish our entire school community a very happy, joyous, and safe holiday season, marked by a very happy new year for all. 2024 promises to be a very exciting year for our schools. Thank you, and that concludes my report.
Thank you. Correspondence, emails from C. Shotwell, J. Coladarsi, K. Hawley, M. Bratton, M. Catano, N. Curioni, and C. Anderson. Committee reports. Finance and Facilities Committee, please.
Finance and Facility met twice this month. The first meeting on November 16th had Lindsay, Jess, Peter, Katie, and myself in attendance and focused exclusively on potential security improvements throughout the district. Our second meeting was on December 4th. In attendance again were Lindsay, Jess, Peter, Katie, and myself. First, the committee continued the ongoing discussion of potential improvements to district security. We then reviewed the finalized enrollment numbers and were pleasantly surprised to see a small increase of 32 students from this year's numbers. At this point in time, we're not projecting a need to add a section, but we will keep an eye on enrollment numbers and see if that becomes necessary next year. We got an update from our architect with more good news. He provided us with a promising update indicating that any replacement of the Cuccinella roof could be done in phases if necessary, which gives the district much needed flexibility as we seek to avoid additional debt service related to the replacement of the roof at such time it needs to be replaced. The next thing I'm going to go over, I'm going to get into the weeds a little bit. The district recently commissioned an air quality test at Old Farmers Road School. As I'm sure you're aware, a number of improvements were made in the not-too-distant past to the air handling equipment in response to air quality in the school. The district hired Aero Environmental Services to perform an inspection as well as, this is a mouthful, a categorization and quantification of airborne fungal structures in an inertial sample by optical microscopy in accordance with ASTM D7391. I'm happy to report that the 2 samples taken showed counts of just 360 and 390 per cubic meter. To put that in perspective, fresh air outside has a count of 125,490. So there were also no unique spore types inside as compared to outside, so the conclusion of the report was, and I quote, "A source of mold in the air was not present at the time of sampling." More good news there. The committee then discussed opportunities for improvement to our already successful pre-K program that Jill mentioned in her president's remarks. And finally, the committee performed an analysis on the district's ability to provide substitute teachers when needed. Data going back to 2017 was reviewed for fill rates, requests, and pay rates. And as I'm sure you're aware, 2 of the district goals currently are directly impacted by our ability to provide substitute teachers. Goal 1 seeks to expand our co-teaching model, and Goal 2 is about expanding professional development. So if we can't get substitute teachers, oftentimes a building administrator is forced to pull one of the teachers in a co-teaching model out of that classroom to cover any vacancies. Likewise, if we don't have substitute teachers and we want to pull teachers out for professional development, we can't do that. We also benchmark data from surrounding districts in terms of pay rates, and our rates of pay for subs are within 0.4 standard deviations of the mean for this area, and if a sub meets the threshold for the graduated pay rate we instituted a couple of years ago, they would actually be a half a standard deviation above the mean. This seems to have been effective, as our fill rates for substitute teachers have jumped from 63% to 80% since instituted. Finally, one more thing of note, the district's overall request for subs is just under half of what it was in the 2017-2019 pre-pandemic timeframe. Such a significant drop in absenteeism is an indicator that the district continues to move in the right direction. That's all I have to report.
Thank you. Communications and Governance Committee, please.
The Communications and Governance Committee met on Monday, December 11th. In attendance was myself, Cindy Ruggiero, Rob Waskis, Jason Kazenblatt, and Dr. Ternamian. We discussed the slogan and logo update, which was the committee reviewed some sample designs for a new logo, and the committee expects to review more samples within the coming weeks. We then discussed Policy 5757, Gender Identity and Expression. The committee reviewed Policy 5757, which has been renumbered 5145.7 to be consistent with the rest of the state. And that's up for a second read this evening. We also discussed security. The committee reviewed the current SRO contract and discussed various options toward finding ways to increase the security coverage across all of our schools. That's it.
Thank you. Public comment on agenda items, please. If you have a public comment on an agenda item, please approach the microphone. We'll ask that you state your name and your address, and you'll have 3 minutes to address the board on agenda items only, please.
John Olmixon, 194 Fairview Ave. It's concerning to me that at last month's meeting, during the new business quorum, it was revealed that the Governance Committee disseminated a new policy after 9 p.m. on the eve of the meeting with the intent to repeal Policy 5756 and replace it with Policy 5757. Not only was less than 24 hours notice given, but it was apparent that the policy read wasn't even the version that was sent out the night before, but shortly before the meeting on that same day. Policy 5756 and its restriction of parental rights was arguably the biggest and most controversial issue in the state of New Jersey this past election. In 2023, everyone who has done the research on this policy, like myself, and of course all of you, knows as a board, you either keep it or fully repeal it. Anything in the middle is just asking to be sued by the state. It is unfortunate, but that's the Attorney General, but the Attorney General has set this precedent, and it is clear. For those who aren't aware, the Hanover Board of Ed was sued by Attorney General Matt Placken the day after the second reading passed of their parental notification Poly 8463. In an effort to satisfy the AG and judges' concerns during the hearing, Hanover even removed references to LAD protected classes, like transgender students, and still, the AG did not drop the lawsuit. Middletown, Manalapan, and Marlborough were all sued by AG Placken again the day after the second readings passed for various parental notification amendments to 5756. All 3 are enjoined, being forced to keep 5756, a lawsuit that is still ongoing despite the fact that the policy is non-mandatory. The AG has shown if you do this and get sued, there is no oops, we'll rescind action the board can take. Our board, the district, the town, the taxpayers would all be stuck paying for and fighting this likely lawsuit if a yes vote wins tonight. Which is why I was shocked to learn that our board, in one motion, which is very important here, voted to do a rewrite and repeal replace of 5756, something the entire board had not even been made aware of 24 hours before the meeting. It was stated it was an existing policy used by River's Edge, and our own board attorney, Mr. Fogarty, reviewed and approved it for our use. Many of you on this board and in this room already know my feelings on the policy itself. But I want to say for the record, and strictly from a legal perspective, I think what you're doing is very risky and reckless, as you are immediately putting our board in jeopardy of a lawsuit if you vote yes. I hope you reconsider your noticeably rushed changes to these contentious board policies. I want to end with a few questions I'm hoping the board members can answer before a vote is taken on this tonight. When did our board attorney, Mr. Fogarty, start his revisions on the policy for our district's use? Can you confirm he personally signed off on the revisions made from River's Edge policy? And lastly, why is the current board ramming through a controversial policy with as little notice as possible and opening the door to future litigation? 3 of the sitting board members, 2 who voted yes on the first read, will not even be here on the board the next meeting to deal with the potential ramifications of their decision. Thank you.
Anyone else for public comment on agenda items? Okay. Do you want to comment?
Again, I've always wanted to live up to the commitment of responding to public comment. The comments tonight to this so far focus specifically on policy. I do consider that a matter of governance. I do try to stay in my lane as the lead administrator in the district, and so while I consult on policy, that is something that's driven by the board. We do have the benefit of our board attorney here this evening, and so what I might do as a courtesy to give you a few minutes to potentially prepare in terms of the response to the questions specific to Attorney Fogarty is at the end of our second public comment. If you would share your reflections about that and any other reflections you maybe have about it for the benefit of our full community. So we'll hear from our board attorney this evening, and other than that, I'll defer to any other board comments.
I'll make some comment because I am the committee head for the governance. Some of the information that you have is actually incorrect, and I spoke to the lawyer of Hanover, who, by the way, is also the lawyer of Westmore Central, who also has the same policy that we're proposing to pass under a second read tonight. I also spoke to several attorneys who did say, should the state try and overstep and sue us, we can rescind, and it's no harm, no foul. Other than that, there's at least 60 districts that have the same exact policy, have had it since 2019, none of which have been sued, including our own Westmore Central. Thank you.
I'd like to add to that. I did go through all 568 districts in the state of New Jersey, and I pulled every single one of their policies to sort of look, because we didn't have any concrete data, and I was able to confirm that 68 districts have policy 5145.7, which was originally written by the NJSBA Policy Writing Services. This policy also, the earliest adoption that I could find on record was in 2014. In the past almost 10 years, the alternative policy has not been involved in any lawsuits by the state for violating LAD. And from what I can tell, it has also not yet to garner any substantial concern from the communities as it has served. I did review all of the Board of Ed minutes for districts that had number of conventions consistent with being an NJSBA policy subscriber, and I was unable to find any abolition of the policy in the recent months. So as far as I'm concerned, the policy has not been rescinded, and it has not been, it has also not been sued by the state for violating LAD in the past 10 years. I'd also like to point out that there was lawsuits to the amendment of 5756. However, that lawsuit was due to the fact that the amendments directly violated the LAD, and so it doesn't stop other districts from being able to make changes within their district. It's just that we have to make those changes that are within the accordance of the law. So I am confident with a policy that has had a 10-year run with several amendments to that, going through several districts that have it. I'm confident that if it has not been sued by the state in the past 10 years, that replacing our policy with this long-standing policy is not, in fact, an amendment to 5756. It is instead a replacement. So I just wanted to fill everyone in on the further due diligence that was done. I do believe that rescinding without replacing is not achieving a goal that some people have put forth as the purpose for rescinding it, and that is just not possible by law. So I do believe that putting in a policy that gives our teachers, administration, and parents and students concrete guidance is a lot more responsible than rescinding it and not replacing it with any kind of guidance at all. Thank you.
I'm in awe of the time that you've spent and in the respect for the due diligence. I did speak with Mr. Fogarty yesterday. He has not reviewed this policy. He has not approved of this policy. So I intend later on in the agenda to move to table it for 1 month to give him the opportunity. And I don't know what attorneys you spoke with, but it wasn't ours. I also had the opportunity to look at the River Edge School District policy. Ms. Cherry was here with us at the last meeting, and I think you indicated that the policy that we're contemplating adopting was not written by Mr. Fogarty. I know that he provided the River Edge School District policy, which was used in Rob's terminology as a framework for what we're looking to propose. In a line-by-line comparison of that policy with this policy, there are several sections of that policy that were omitted from the policy that we're seeking to adopt. At the last meeting, I had asked if someone could identify for me which provisions were discretionary and which were required by NJLAD, and no one had an answer for that. I was advised that council wrote the policy, it's acceptable. And that was, my understanding was it's a duplicate of the River Edge School District policy that I believe comes from 2019. It's not a duplicative. There are, again, additional provisions I'm happy to go through. I'm happy to point them out. But there are portions that are omitted, so I'm not sure why those omissions were made. Who made the decision to omit those things? In my opinion, given the controversial nature of the policy and the attention that it's gotten from the Attorney General and the other districts, regardless of this specific policy being subject to litigation, I do think for us to vote on it and allow it to pass this evening would be negligent. And I don't know why we need to rush to get it approved this evening. If we could get our attorney to look at the policy, weigh in within the next month, and have it on the agenda for next month. But I'll certainly make the formal motion, and maybe it'll get denied, maybe not, but I would be remiss to raise it and make the motion, and I will do so when we get to the policy portion of the meeting this evening. Did anyone else have any comments before we move on?
I'd just like to provide one more piece of information. I actually, as I don't have access to the board attorney since I am not the superintendent or the president, I went to NJSBA's attorney and they had the policy and they reviewed it and they said that they found that it was in line with the policy that they have.
Okay, that wasn't supplied to me, or, I wasn't asked to reach out to the attorney, so I'm certainly happy to forward it on, or I'm sure Dr. Turnamian is happy to forward it on, just to get that, belt suspenders and make sure that what we're doing is appropriate. I would feel better about it than just passing the policy without that, but certainly it'll be up for a vote, and if we decide to table it, we do. If we want to vote on it tonight, it will be, the votes will fall where they may. But barring any other comments, I think we can move on to the approval of minutes. Can I have a motion To approve the minutes from the November 14th, 2023 meeting. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Would someone like to please move education?
Sure. I'd like to move items number 1 through 4.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Ruggiero?
Yes.
Mr. Capagrosso?
Yes.
Mrs. Succi?
Yes.
Mr. Kostenblatt?
Yes.
Mr. Waskis?
Yes.
Ms. Wilson?
Yes.
Mrs. DeSico?
Yes.
Mrs. Muserino?
Yes. If someone could please move finance.
Finance would like to move agenda item number 5, a motion to accept with gratitude the following contributions. $500 from an anonymous donor used to pay off lunch balances at the Long Valley Middle School. $253 from the cast members mentioned by Dr. Ternamian of the Spring 2023 musical to be used at the Long Valley Middle School for sound system rental for the Spring 2024 musical, and $3,140.91 from Life Touch to be used at the Cuccinella School for educational programs.
Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Ruggiero?
Yes, but I need to abstain from 5A.
Okay. Mr. Capagrosso?
Yes.
Mrs. Succi?
Yes.
Mr. Kostenblatt?
Yes.
Mr. Waskis?
Yes.
Ms. Wilson?
Yes.
Mrs. DeSico? Mrs. Muserino?
Yes.
Finance would like to move items 6 through 12 on tonight's agenda.
Second.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Ruggiero?
Yes.
Mr. Capagrosso?
Yes.
Mrs. Succi?
Yes.
Mr. Kostenblatt?
Yes.
Mr. Waskis?
Yes.
Ms. Wilson?
Yes, with abstention on number 10.
Mrs. DeSico?
Yes.
Mrs. Muserino?
Yes. If someone could please move personnel.
Personnel would like to move item number 13 on the agenda. Motion to accept with regret the following retirements. Joseph Mueller, custodian, Cuccinella School, effective January 1st, 2024, due to retirement, 12 years of service. And Mariel Michalopoulos, special ed teacher, Long Valley Middle School, July 1st, 2024, due to retirement after 16 years in the district.
And if I could just offer the district's recognition and distinguishing appreciation for both Joseph and Mariella for their service, their commitment to our schools over an extended period of time, 12 and 16 years, and we wish them the best of health and much happiness in their retirement years.
Any other discussion? Did we have a second on that?
No, I didn't hear a second.
Okay,
Second.
Was there a
thank you.
second?
Any discussion? Okay, roll call, please.
Mrs. Ruggiero?
Yes.
Mr. Capagrosso?
Yes.
Mrs. Succi?
Yes.
Mr. Kostenblatt?
Yes.
Mr. Waskis?
Yes.
Ms. Wilson?
Yes.
Mrs. DeSico? Mrs. Muserino?
Yes.
Personnel would like to move items 14 through 20 on the agenda.
Any discussion? Roll call?
Mrs. Ruggiero?
Yes.
Mr. Capagrosso?
Yes.
Mrs. Succi?
Yes.
Mr. Kostenblatt?
Yes.
Mr. Waskis?
Yes.
Ms. Wilson?
Yes.
Mrs. DeSico? Mrs. Muserino?
Yes. Moving to policy, before we move to policy, I indicated before, I would like to move to table the second read of 5145.7, gender identity and expression, which is revised, and yes, that's what I would like to table. The revision or the adoption of 5145.7, gender identity and expression. Do we have a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
Yes, I would like to give my thoughts on this, this whole policy. Number one, we don't need it. It's not required. Number two, I feel that the rights of other students are being challenged if we adopt this policy. Number three, a parent should always be included on their child's whatever decision they make. If a teacher, administrator discusses their child, they need to be contacted. This is the flavor of the week. And yes, I said it, the flavor of the week. What's going to be next? We all know what's in the news. What's going to be next? We're here to educate our students. They're all going to have different challenges. It's the leadership of our school administrators that need to take control and lead the school correctly. And that is what I don't think is being done right now. Let's not make a policy where we don't need a policy. Let's strengthen our administrators. Thank you.
If I may. Sure. Just, if I may, respectfully, board member, in response to the comments specifically to our administrators, I do think that respectfully was inappropriate. We have strong administrators across all of our schools who are deeply dedicated to our schools. That includes in our classrooms, all of our teachers, deeply dedicated. And so in this setting, I do feel it's my responsibility to defend these administrators who I know to be deeply dedicated and long-serving, talented individuals who are working in our schools, regardless of what happens with the policy. Specifically, our administrators are very talented and very dedicated to our students. I just want to reassure you and our community of that, okay?
My feeling is that I think 99% of the things that happen in school, parents are notified. This is dealing with that 1% that's sort of gray. They're not notified immediately, but they will be notified once the child is in a safe environment. That's how I look at this. If a child is fighting, the parents are called immediately. If they deface property, the parents are called immediately for anything. This is that one instance where a kid comes, he might be frightened, he might be overly anxious, he's afraid, and he needs to be safe before the parent is notified. That's all this is saying. Either self-harm or harming other people. If a child comes and says, these kids are bullying me, I'm gonna bring a gun to school tomorrow. The teacher is mandated to notify law enforcement. Police have to be called for a statement like that. That's the law. Most of these children are protected under the LAD, Law Against Discrimination. So, it's that 1% of the children that are coming that are really delayed for their safety, and then the parent is notified. Same thing if a child is epileptic and falls out in the classroom, the teacher's not going to grab a phone and call the parent. They're going to make sure that child is stable, call the nurse in, and then the parent is called. What do you want to do? Do you want to send them to the hospital? Is there medication that you have? That's that 1% that we're talking about.
I'd like to, we don't do public comment right now. I would like to comment as a board member, though, and add to what Carmine is saying. Again, throughout the policy, it says that one situation is the exception, not the rule. I have heard many times people talk about how the schools will be informed if there's stuff going on at home, and I can tell you with great certainty that's just not true. If something is going on at home, if there's a domestic situation outside this school, the law enforcement, the local law enforcement, is not required to contact the school. In fact, it's really not their place. There is a law where they have to let the school know that something traumatic has taken place, but they are not allowed to give the specifics. Something traumatic could be a parent having a seizure. Something traumatic could be maybe their sibling is a drug addict. It doesn't necessarily mean or not mean that the child is not being abused at home. So I just wanted to add that.
I think we've taken this a little far afield. My motion is much simpler than all of this, and it really doesn't get into our opinions on the subject matter at all. My motion to table this is in the spirit of due diligence. It's to make sure that we're adopting a policy where we're adequately protecting our district from scrutiny, from claims. Again, this policy was sent to the board on November 13th at 9:11 p.m., and it was indicated that this was written under the framework of a policy written by Mr. Fogarty that was adopted by the River Edge School District. Again, I spoke with Mr. Fogarty yesterday. He has not reviewed and approved the policy that we're seeking to adopt. So my request is that we table it to get his blessing on the policy to ensure that we are in accordance with NJLAD and we are not running afoul. As I indicated previously this evening, reviewing the policy that we're seeking to adopt in comparison to that which has been adopted by River Edge, there are some significant changes, most notably omissions from our policy to the River Edge policy. There are seven different sections of multiple sentences that were omitted, in addition to a whole section in the River Edge policy which discusses official records. It also, the River Edge policy includes legal references, cross-references, which are omitted from our policy. I'm not sure if Mr. Fogarty did in fact write this River Edge policy. I would imagine that there might be a reason that such verbiage was included in that policy, and I would just like him to just look at our policy, and if he's approving of it, we bring it up for a second read next time and adopt it. I'm not sure if there's a certain rush to adopt it this evening, but again, my motion is simply to just table this to make sure that we're doing what's appropriate under the law and with the blessing of legal counsel. So if anyone has any other discussion, I think we can bring it to a roll call.
Sure, I'll make a comment or two. In the spirit of what you mentioned in your comments for the motion to table.
Could you put the
Rob,
mic
can you
up?
use
Yeah.
the microphone,
Sure.
please?
Apologies, bad habit. I'll move it closer. Is that better? So I'll make a few comments in the spirit of the motion to table. First and foremost, we were mistaken. The policy was not written by Mr. Fogarty. It was written by the NJSBA Policy Writing Services. It's an alternative to Strauss Esme, who writes a number of our policies, the vast majority of which we approve on a routine basis without special consideration or review from our specific board attorneys. This is not substantially different, having been, again, written by a group of lawyers in the employment of the NJSBA. It is not uncommon for us to tailor policy. In fact, it is our job to do so. We are a policy-making body, and we're responsible for tailoring policy to the needs of our school district and our community, which is what we've done here. You asked who made the changes. Those changes were made in the Communications and Governance Committee, as it is their purview to tailor policy for the district. I will make one more comment that the aim of policy is to provide guidance and direction to our superintendent and leadership team while minimizing ambiguity. It's to guide decisions and to influence actions. So when a comment is made that this policy is not required by law, we have quite a number of policies that are not required by statute. We have a dress code policy. We have a policy on public performances by students. We have a policy on class trips. We have numerous policies that are not required by statute. we are in fact responsible for writing policies. It's in our very own bylaws. It is Policy 0120, Authority and Powers. It specifically tells us we have the power to make, amend, and repeal rules not inconsistent with the statutes or the rules of the state, which this policy is not inconsistent with those rules, and has a long history of having been adopted by numerous districts over the past decade. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, roll call, please.
Mrs. Ruggiero?
What are we actually voting on?
To table
Motion
the
to table.
policy.
To table
To
it?
table the second read.
Yes.
Mr. Capagrosso?
No.
Mrs. Succi?
No.
Mr. Kostenblatt?
No.
Mr. Waskis?
No.
Ms. Wilson?
No.
Mrs. DeSico?
No.
Mrs. Muserino?
Yes. Okay, moving on. Can I have a motion for a second read of the policies listed on number 21 of the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? Do we just do a roll call on this? Yeah, roll call, please.
Mrs. Ruggiero?
No.
Mr. Capagrosso?
Yes.
Mrs. Succi?
Yes.
Mr. Kostenblatt?
Yes.
Mr. Waskis?
Yes.
Ms. Wilson?
Yes.
Mrs. DeSico?
Yes.
Mrs. Muserino?
Yes, with the exception of 5145.7. I'm voting no on that. Thank you. Moving on to unfinished business. Does anyone have any unfinished business? Anyone have any new business? Okay. Public comment. This is public comment on all items. Please approach the microphone. You have 3 minutes. Please state your name and your address.
Oh, I just got very nervous. Melanie Bratton, West Valley Brook Road. The elementary school report cards just came out, and I have something kind of exciting, but shouldn't be exciting, I guess, to most people. My 4th grader finally has the approaching expectations for the grade level, and it's a really big deal. At the start of 3rd grade, he was at just about a 1st grade reading level, and the whole team at Old Farmers came together, kind of determined what he needed after a very long process of working with Ms. Rojas and Ms. Harvey. Ms. Calderola really went above and beyond, even worked with him over the summer. And he's really, I think they finally found what's working. So I kind of wanted to give that feedback. They started using Orton Gillingham with him, and it's made a world of difference. So I kind of just wanted to give you a little bit of that. I don't know when that started being offered to our teachers, but it definitely made a big difference for my son. So thank you.
Thank you.
John Olmixon, 194 Fairview Ave. I just have to say I am disappointed in the outcome of that vote. Last meeting, it was very crystal clear that our board attorney, Mr. Fogarty, reviewed and approved it. It's on the record. I understand that you said it was a mistake. I don't know how that's a mistake that can be made. I think it was, for all intents and purposes, done deliberately. I actually contacted a few of you off the record. More due diligence was done. Again, I was assured our board attorney reviewed and approved it. I don't know how that's something that's just an oversight. Doesn't make any sense to me. I don't know what you guys are doing with that. I don't mean to be disrespectful, but that was very crystal clear. I wanted to know about Mr. Fogarty signing off on this, and it turns out he didn't. Thank you.
Oh, yikes, it's electric. Hi, everyone. Tara Lagos, 30 Zellers Road. I would be remiss, as a proud product of the Washington Township school system who has chosen to come back here, whose husband has been here since he was 6, to raise our 2 amazing, of course I'm biased, beautiful children, incredibly successful, one graduating Ivy League Wednesday, going on to grad school, the other studying to be a teacher, with a minor in Spanish, certification in special ed and gen ed. all had amazing leaders as teachers, leaders as principals, and as I've had the absolute pleasure of teaching so many of your awesome children, I just want to give props. I want to give props to our principals, of which I've had the pleasure of working under 1, 2, 3, varied, had the absolute pleasure of sitting in on the hiring process with Miss Jenna Hawkswell, and that was a terrific, terrific opportunity. I have nothing but positive feedback and an immense sense of gratitude for Mark Ippolito, for Michael Craver, for John Winstead, and Jenna Hawkswell, and my fellow leaders at home, right? Because open and honest communication is a really good way to handle it. If we need a policy to enforce that, I'm cool with that. I know, I just have to mix it up a little bit, Dr. T. But for the people here, for the people watching at home, for the people who think our test scores suck, I'm really, really, really proud to be a teacher here, to help in raising your children. Notice I said help. I can't do it alone, and we shouldn't. But we're so much stronger together. And I'm looking at 1, 2, 3, hi you, 4, who else? 5 people that I've helped, a small part, but a privileged part, to raise these amazing kids. Oh, you too, yeah, so even more. So thank you for giving me that blessing, for trusting me, for working with me, when calling me, texting me, you too, right? Okay. Love your kids, love my job, hard as hell, but thanks to our administrators, thanks to the Board of Ed people who are moving on to the next great adventure, thanks to the ones who are staying on, I'm really proud of Washington Township, so thanks.
Thank you.
Jennifer Ryan, 67 Black River Road. I think that it's disappointing, and that the point that was really missed here was that by not gaining the board attorney's approval, we have missed the opportunity as a community to insulate ourselves from potential liability with the litigation. No one has approved this, but everybody's sitting here. That means the liability is going to run directly to everyone sitting here that approved that vote without anyone else to back them up. The board attorney is there on staff. We have access. Jill has access. The superintendent has access to the board attorney to gain the wisdom and the knowledge that the board attorney is there to provide. And that insulates the board, saying, hey, you know what? We relied on his decision, and so if you come at us, we have him or her to say, you know what? We relied on them, and that's what we made this decision based on that. You guys have taken that that insulation that the board attorney provides. You've taken that away. I also think that no one up here, for the most part, has read Judge Minkowicz's opinion, the order to show cause, because it specifically outlines why we have LAD, the importance of LAD, and that there is no need for the addition. I don't always think in policy that more is better. More is just sometimes more, and it muddies the water. So I'm sorry, but it's disappointing, and I wish that, you know, coming onto the board, that I would have had the opportunity to have that insulation that the board attorney provides.
Thank you.
Isabel Vieira, 40 North Mount Lebanon Road. I also think that this should be reviewed by the board attorney. That's why we have him or her. The fact that such an important and controversial policy is being read without him even reviewing it, in my opinion, is frivolous. I think that it just opens us up for a can of worms where the need is not there. So if we have a board attorney and there is a policy that is this controversial, to have it being read a second time and voted on without him even looking at it, to me, I think is not doing what's in the best interest of our board. It will open us up for lawsuits. It happens in other places. We are not exempt from that.
Thank you.
I'm going to hold this. Joe Coladarsi, Long Valley, Laurel Drive. So I'm going to echo what they've been saying. It is kind of disappointing that this occurred. Mrs. Musarino made extremely good points. Without saying it, she was basically, I was taking it and I was noticing that we were lied to. The board members were lied to last meeting. It is on the record as having been written by our board attorney or the board attorney. That is not a mistake. There's no, it's not a coincidence that this was rammed in last month after the board elections. But the funniest part about it is it was just moments after the Code of Governance being approved where a number of you violated the Code of Governance. You remember, you know, that pet toy that was just done? November, so October, we have a board member that said that she was not interested in making a decision on the fly when something was brought up in new business. However, this was brought up in new business by that very same board member. Throwing this up under new business where nobody has even done our research, done our homework, done real thinking on it, I don't think that's fair to make any sort of decision tonight. That was said by one of the board members, the godmother of the Code of Governance, in October. And then this was brought to light. So I think a number of you should read the Code of Governance again and maybe follow it. Thanks.
Thank you.
Follow the tall guy. Megan Teeling, Beacon Hill Road, Long Valley. I do feel that it was rushed. I'm not quite sure why that's the case, and we don't want to give the board attorney the opportunity. But regardless, it's been adopted tonight. I do have some questions. I don't know if that's something we can do at this point in time after it's been adopted. But in reading the policy 5145.7, it basically says about students that do not want their parents and guardians to know about their transgender status shall be addressed on a case-by-case basis. In some cases, notifying parents and guardians carries risks for the student, such as being kicked out of the home. However, decision not to notify the parents and guardians of their child's transgender status shall be the exception, not the rule, and must be based on compelling or exceptional circumstances. I, as a parent, would feel a lot more comfortable if we outlined what those compelling and exceptional circumstances would be. I don't know if there's a reference to another policy that would be considered in determining whether or not a parent gets to be involved. I think parents should always be involved, for the record. However, if we are going to try to protect students that may be at risk, I don't think that's the case in most cases. I don't think that parents are the enemy. But if this is what we're doing, and there's a level of comfort for everyone that we now have a policy, we know what's expected, how people should respond in this situation, I don't think that's a bad idea. But as a parent, I would like some more detail about what would constitute the school determining that I get cut out of the loop of something concerning my child. Additionally, I do have some concerns. I have a son and a daughter, and I worry about each of them for the same reason. My son's in 6th grade, and this year had to start changing for gym, and didn't want to change in the changing room with other boys. I understand needing to accommodate, but I also think that the other students need to be taken into account. So I'm just kind of curious what that means. So under the locker room, restroom accessibility policy, it states that the district aims to support all students while also ensuring their safety and comfort. And under HIB, it says that the board shall make every effort to maintain a safe and supportive learning and educational environment that is free from harassment, intimidation, and/or bullying. So that's for all students. So I'm just kind of curious how the district will balance that for students that are uncomfortable with the situation while still making sure that we are planning and providing for other students that are perhaps experiencing these types of things. I just wanted to say thank you to the exiting board members for your service. Thank you. And Mrs. Lygos, you made a huge difference in my son's life. Thank you. Have a good night, everyone.
Thank you. Let's wait. Does anybody else have a public comment to make? You may approach. Oh. I think he's
Dominic Ciccarelli, 3 Corinne Court. I just wanted to say I'm very encouraged by the outcome of the vote today. And specifically, I wanted to thank Ms. DeSico for the work she did to read it through last month. I'm usually up here complaining, but you guys did a good job today, so thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else for public comment? Okay, since everyone else has had the opportunity, Mr. Coladarsi.
Joe Coladarsi again, Laurel Drive. So now that the policy stuff is done, that's settled, it's on the books, I'm hoping that our board can start focusing on student achievement. I think that that is something that really needs to be looked at for our own reasons. We pulled our kids out this year and they're now going to a private school. And I have to tell you that I am highly concerned at how far behind our 2 right now 4th graders are in comparison to the kids who are in the school that they're in right now. My son, we didn't even know this, and we read with them, we do things with them. My son, early on in this school year, couldn't make rhyming words, couldn't rhyme words in 4th grade. In 4th grade, couldn't do it. They got a taste of what it's like to have homework in 4th grade. They rarely, if ever, had homework. And I'm not necessarily saying this to teachers. I think teachers work well beyond what they get paid to do. I firmly believe that. Teachers work extremely hard. I'm not convinced personally that the expectation is high enough for our students by whoever. I don't know. It's up to the district to figure that out. But the fact that my kids, and my daughter has always been a very good student. My son, those of you who might know, not so much. But they are both thriving right now, doing exceptionally well, and learning things that, I mean, I feel like they'd be running circles around their former selves in comparison to what they were. So I would implore you all to focus on student achievement, academic rigor. And similar to what a board member said last month, comparing ourselves to the state average in scores is useless. That's just a waste of words. It's a waste of time. There's no reason to do that. We need to start focusing on our district in comparison to like districts, because I don't think we're where we should be. And again, I'm not blaming teachers. I don't know what the exact problem is, but it should be addressed, and I hope it is. Thanks.
Thank you. Although we already had final call, I'll give another final call. Anybody else for public comment?
Can I just make one quick one?
Sure.
Thank you. I just want to say it was my pleasure serving with all of you guys, and I do wish the new board in January all the best of luck. Very short and sweet. That was it.
Thank you. Thank you, Stephanie. Go ahead.
Okay, good evening again, Washington Township School Community. We had some variety of public comment tonight. Let me be careful with my notes to please make sure I try to address as much as I possibly can. I want to start at the top. You may recall our first speaker on the second comment this evening, Melanie, who came to the mic speaking about your child's report card. So I thank you for sharing that story. You had embedded in your comment a question about OG. It actually has a long legacy in our district, living very deeply in our intervention world and in many of our classrooms. Our district, pre-me, was investing in OG training for our teachers for many years. And it is, I consider it to be the gold standard. And I'm so excited that our intervention teachers and our general ed teachers there are doing the level of analysis and collaboration that is having success. And I see that. I have the benefit and privilege of seeing that happen across all of our schools. So I'm glad you shared that tidbit this evening, and we're committed to continuing to do that work. Tara, I didn't know you have a graduate coming up. Congratulations. That's super exciting. As a parent who has my seniors at home waiting anxiously where that will eventually become. So happy for you, happy for your family. Thank you for all you do for our community and everything as well. So thank you so much. We then had a total, I think, of about 5 comments with the same theme related to our policy this evening. So in a couple of moments, I am going to turn it over to our board attorney to make some comments. You should know both Attorney Stacey Cherry and Steve Fogarty work in the exact same firm. So when we say we're referring to our board attorney, depending sometimes on who may pick up that phone, there's a variety of different people that work at that firm. It's not always the same attorney. That's the work of education lawyers. So we'll get to that in just a moment. Excuse me. There was one comment that was just made related to test scores and achievement. And a couple things I'll say about that. I don't agree with the statement that comparing our results to state averages is not helpful. I think it's a helpful part of a process that we need to do annually, but it's also just the first step. I can reassure you as a district, there's much deeper analysis happening in our schools at the classroom level, at the school level, that's ongoing. When you're using data to inform instruction, you don't just do it once a year. And that initial annual report we do just once a year to pressure test how we are compared to state averages. But there will be ongoing data discussions that we have with the community. And the first starting point I would remind you all out, if you're sitting out there asking, what are we doing about rigor? What are we doing about behindedness? What are we doing about all of these concerns we have about our students coming out of the pandemic? Well, I'll refer you, number one, to the grant that we've won. It was on the agenda tonight that not all districts are winning. We're really proud of that. Those tutoring services, I think, are going to have a deep impact. But beyond this grant and what we did tonight, I'll refer you to our website and our action plan. We have very robust district goals, and aligned with those district goals are action plans. And in those action plans are the details of what we're doing and what we're holding ourselves accountable to. And the other layer of accountability that I've made a commitment to the community about is 3 times a year, I will present to the community about our progress on our action plan. And so my next presentation right now I have slated for February. There'll be one at the end of the year and one at the start of the year, because I think that needs to be an ongoing, continual process. So that's how I answer some of those general questions about what are we doing. There's a lot we're doing in those action plans that I would just refer you all to. I just feel like I'm forgetting one thing. There were questions, Megan, I believe it was you, asking some kind of questions related to comfort and some additional, like one thing I heard from you was giving us, the board, feedback about wanting to have another level of guidance. I think that's well taken feedback. I heard some questions about comfort and so on. I think it's important for me to not respond to potential hypotheticals, but I would refer you and any other member of our community who is a parent of a child expressing any kind of discomfort for whatever reason, to please either reach out to a school counselor, reach out to a school leader. We are committed to working with all of our families in partnership so that our students feel safe in our schools. That's always going to be a top priority for us. So I just want to reassure you about that. Just give me one quick moment to review my other notes. I think with that, Board Attorney Cherry, I'm going to turn it over to you to any summation of the comments made this evening. If you wouldn't mind, thank you.
Absolutely. There you go.
So I just wanted to comment that I think it's important to note for the public that adopting policies for the board is one of their primary jobs and focuses, in addition to things like selecting who the superintendent of schools will be. So that is certainly a critical role for the board. Our recommendation is to follow the board's bylaws with regard to policy adoption, which includes referring it through the superintendent. That can include providing comments from the superintendent or review, or sometimes going through something like a policy committee, and then having the first and second reading. There's no requirement that a policy be reviewed by the board attorney, although it certainly is something that districts can do. If they want a policy reviewed, then our office can review the policy, but it is not something that's required. In this case, we did not review the policy ahead of time. However, it is not something that the board is required to request that we do, nor is it something that we have to do for every policy.
Thank you. Dr. T and I decided that we hit all our district distinctions in our opening remarks, so we are going to forego that portion of the agenda. And with that, I would like to request a motion to adjourn. All in favor? Aye. Thank you so much.